How's it going, everyone? It is Friday, July 12th, 2024. Let's get into the picks for this video pretty quickly because we might have some very nice trades setting up. So if I go to my YouTube picks, I gave CFLT as a short as well as EL for a short. So let's take a look at CFLT yesterday and how we could have played that. So stock was breaking down some major levels. We had a little bit of room to this low minus trend line coming into play. And the stock had a nice long green candle, had a pretty decent pop, and was slowly eroding this away during the market drop. So I said if it can break through this low of the day and kind of close below it, that's when you would take the short. So you get in here at 1250, and then you get this nice long green candle, and then you get a pullback to this level. So we're still holding this level here, right? We get a little poke, but we don't actually quite get through it. And then we settle down. So when you see this sort of bounce and it still holds, you still have a chance to get out at a double bottom. So if you entered over here at 2509, you weather through the pullback, and then you close near the low of the day, you get out for a nice 19 or 20 cent gain on the stock. And that's a pretty nice win. So that's how you do it on CFLT. This is a small trade, but remember, SPY was in a bit of a meat grinder, kind of compressing. So you didn't really have a lot of tailwind, even though we had a bearish trend day. We were expecting a bounce, or we were expecting some sort of sell-off, and we didn't quite get it. So nice win on CFLT. Let's look at EL yesterday as a short. So same thing, or not, maybe not the same thing with EL. EL was a little bit different. So let's go back first to the D1 chart here. It's a very weak D1 chart, and it had popped back up to test its 8 EMA, and then it started to reject off. So it was actually a bit stronger in the day during the market decline, and then as the market started to stall, it actually picked up steam, which was a sign that there was selling pressure in the stock. So it had a pretty big move. It filled in the gap, and it tested the low of the day right around here, around 102. And it was just compressing on it for a little while. And then we finally broke through that low of the day around 255, or even I could say probably 250. So that was a nice entry point on this stock. Now, what I would do, and this is where sort of the trade management comes in mind, is that it's 250, day ends at 4, so you don't have a lot of time on this trade. So this is a trade where you would want to sell into strength, because if the move goes against you, you don't have a lot of time to recover. Now, if you have a great entry point, and even if you didn't have that plan, you could still scratch out of the trade or take a tiny win on this pop at 330. But if you had a very strong game plan of like, look, I'm going to sell profits, take a 0.25 ATR move, right? So this is a, $3. So you could get something like 50 to 60 cents. Enter here at 101.85, somewhere here. You definitely get 50 cents on this move. Probably not 60 cents, close to 60 cents, but you can get nice 50 cents on this move. And that's a pretty decent win considering it's fairly late in the day. So EL, nice win on those two fronts. Let's take a look at the market today. So yesterday we had a bearish engulfing candle on the D1. And it was looking pretty bearish. Now, there's two things about this candle that's different than the other candles. So first, if we look at the 4-4 candle, you can see that we had a gap up and a huge range that swallowed pretty much a whole slew of gains for over the past 2 weeks. But this candle wasn't as big. It was more like something like this, where we get a decent range, right? We engulf the prior candle, but we actually don't really get a ton of, it's not a massive range compared to what it was before. This range is maybe about $5, right? And the ATR of SPY is $4. So it's not a huge range. It's not a double ATR move on the stock. So it's bearish. And we have to see what would really happen today. We have to see if we saw follow through or if we did not get any follow through. So long-term fundamental, CPI was a little bit cooler than expected. I think things are sort of running in line. The economy is still pretty good. Unemployment's still pretty low. We're keeping an eye on ISM services fundamentally. Those are kind of the main fundamental driving force. We're going to get a lot of information on earnings this month. Bank earnings is coming out. It's been a mixed bag so far. We're really watching those mega cap tech earnings. Yesterday, I thought the key story point on this sell-off was the sector rotation in the market. So if we look at something like QQQ, a very tech-heavy stock, huge red candle, right? Pull back to its 8 EMA versus something like RSP, which is broke out and had a lot of follow through and heavy volume. Look at IWM. A lot of follow through. Now, there's a little bit of a bearish candle here, but follow through, heavy volume over here. Even TLT. TLT had a pretty big pop. So, we got all these pops up, and it got me thinking, okay, well, we're having the selling pressure here. What's happening? What is CPI changing here? And if it's coming out a little bit cooler, to me, the fundamental implication is that these smaller companies that need to borrow, right? So they need to borrow in order to fuel their businesses. Those borrowing costs are eased because if we have inflation coming down, it's implied coming down. We have a more dovish outlook on the interest rate cycle, and then therefore a more bullish outlook on those laggards. So that's the implication I got, but it wasn't the conclusion from the CPI. It was that the CPI explained the price action that we were seeing, right? So if we did not get a pop-up from the CPI, I would not have gone to that conclusion. I have to have the price action also confirm what I think is happening fundamentally for what the asset managers are doing. So that's enough on the fundamental side. Technically, again, we have this light volume rally. This might be the first kink in that armor, but are we going to get something like this, or are we actually going to get a little bit of follow through? So that remains to be seen. I'm a little bit more bullish now. We're heading into earnings, and there's just going to be that bid that's going to come up in those next 2 weeks of earnings. Mega cap tech is at the end of the month, so usually go to bid 2 weeks into those earnings. So ideally, what I'm looking for here is some sort of a dip, just a little bit of a dip. Maybe, to 550 would be great. Even to a VWAP Q, that's probably going to come up and rise up with any sort of compression of the market here. But any sort of dip over here, and I think that'd be a nice entry point to get some swing longs to ride into earnings. So this is I'm kind of a little bit more mildly bullish shorter term for the rest of the month. And then my outlook for the rest of the year is going to be a little bit more not as bullish immediately. I think in October, we could see some weakness in terms of seasonal weakness here. There might be some profit taking after the mega cap tech earnings. And then, September, there's usually a little bit of weakness. In October, we'll have to see what's going to happen because there could be some nervousness, some risk off taking ahead of the election. But, after those results come in November, we might see that pre-holiday rally from November to December. So I'm a little bit more neutral to mildly bullish for the rest of this month, a little bit more neutral to mildly bearish for the next 2 to 3-ish months. And then I'm expecting a holiday rally. I think if we get a nice dip, a decent dip, that could set us up for some aggressive buying into year end, and we could ride some very, very, in the money calls and ride them out for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or so. Shorter term time frame here on SPY. So let's look at what's happening. Let's zoom out a little bit. And we had this nice buying over here, started to wane, and then we got a buying climax, broke through the top side, and then we rejected, erased all of these gains over here. And then today, we actually had a pretty big bounce. This is a taller bounce than I expected, and we're watching to see here if this is going to be a double top. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is getting a little bit slow. Watching if this is going to be a double top lower high, or if we're actually able to clear this and make a new high. And it kind of depends on the pullback that we're seeing here. So let's zoom in to the M5 chart, see what's going on today. We had PPI come out overnight. Was pretty much a non-factor. It was a little bit hotter than expected. We had a big candle here, a little pop-up, and then nothing really happened with the CPI, with the PPI. You can see here is the PPI candle. So pretty much a non-factor in terms of moving the price action one way or the other. We had a tiny gap up in the market, and we had this nice rally, pretty good volume, very consistent price action. So I missed this move in the morning, and we're like, oh man, I really should have missed this move. It's like I feel like I should have got it in. It's okay. Then we got some compression, and we got a little bit of crackdown here, starting right now. So this is a little bit more bullish than I expected after a day of heavy selling. This tells us that buyers are going to be engaged. It also contextualizes the prior action where after this move here, if we got a nice bout of selling after, that tells us that the selling pressure is pretty strong. Now that we got this bounce, it tells us that the sellers aren't in that much control. And we're just really watching for what happens here. It's a bit of a juncture. So we got this move here. We got some heavy volume coming in over here. And the key that I'm seeing right now is sort of this stopping volume. You can see that if you zoom in into this bar, and let's zoom in zoom in quite a bit here, right? You can see that the volume needs to correspond to the right price action. So we get this crackdown, get a bit of a pause, we get a nice long candle on rising volume, and then we get this doji on even higher volume. So what does that mean? Well, this doji should really be a pretty low volume. It should be something like this, right? But it's not. So that means that we had a ton of activity and no net movement after a bit of a bearish trend. So that is a sign of weakness, potentially a little bit of a reversal. And that's what we got over here. We got a little bit of a pop, high volume coming up. So we're seeing a little bit of weakness in the trend. It doesn't mean that the trend is over. It just means that we may be closer to the end of the trend than the beginning. Another clue of that is this high volume doji here and here. We got a bunch of high volume, unable to get something going. And we didn't reverse right away. We kind of drifted a little bit, and you can see how we were at the end of the trend, and then we started to move down. So I think we're at the end of the trend here. We have a little bit of a bullish 10P cross. We're right by VWAP. So this is not a bad time to get in some longs. And we're going to give some longs today. So we'll see if we can hold this. If we can hold this level for a couple of candles, I will feel pretty decent about taking some longs. I do think we can at least hit the high of the day here, and we can probably hit the all-time high as well. But we're getting a decent cross. It is a little bit above a zero, and I prefer to get it a little bit before zero. But to me, this is a pretty powerful bearish divergence. You can see how we got these crosses up, crosses up. I do have an expectation that we could hit the high of the day here, and I'm leaning on VWAP as that stop. So 2 picks that I have today that I like quite a bit. The first one is SMR. Very, very nice D1 chart, just grinding up higher. Compressed yesterday, and now it's popping out of that compression. Now, with SMR, we look at the price action. On days like this, it's hard to really gauge what stocks are going to be relatively weak in the AM, right? So you can see how this stock is pretty flat relative to SPY, but the clue for relative strength was, one, the price action yesterday, which held pretty much all the gains. It got pulled down a little bit, right? It got pulled down a little bit, but held all the gains, didn't really do too much. That's the first clue intraday. The second major clue is a D1 chart, very, very strong D1 chart. And then the third clue today is that when the market started to stall around 10:45, you can see that this stock actually still climbed higher and then actually had a buying climax. So this is very, very nice. So now the stock is digesting the gains today, and you can see how it's holding this level, holding this bid while the market is going down. So that's what we want to see. I personally wanted to see the open of this 1135 key green bar hold, right? And we're compressing and digesting the gains because we got a little bit ahead of ourselves here. So this is the type of price action I want to see. If we can kind of confirm above this high right here, break out and close above it, ideally perhaps on a kind of a smaller green candle here, that would be a very nice day trade long. So that is going to be the first pick of the day. Second pick of the day is going to be DKS. Consumer cyclical is very, very strong today. Let's take a look at this D1 chart. So huge move yesterday, right? Then huge gap up, a lot of follow through buying through its AVWAP E, and it's just getting through some of these minor horizontal resistance levels coming in from over here on May 30th. If we take a look at some of the volume candles on DKS, you can see that there's a little bit of some volume candles coming into play, so there might be a little bit of price reaction, and that's just what we're seeing in the stock right now. But what I like about this chart is we got a gap up, and then we actually got this bid check, and this is what I really like about this stock. If this kept up going higher and higher and higher and higher, there's SMR, if this just kept going higher and higher, then I don't think that we really would have felt as comfortable. It would have been a little bit chasey, but we got this test, we hit this level, we rejected off it, we made a lower high, or sorry, a higher low double bottom. And then we started to grind up higher, especially again, 1045, right? What's happening in the market? The market's flat. This stock starts to see some buying, and now it's going flat as the market is pulling back. So TKS is very, very nice. If it can break out of that compression, you can see how it makes a nice grindy move higher, and we have plenty of room to this next level around here, around maybe like 229, 230-ish. So plenty of room over there. Could even potentially set up for a swing, but I'm not quite interested in taking some swings. So those are the 2 picks today. I think game plan is I'm looking for bullish picks right now, and I'm willing to adjust my market bias if I'm wrong. So if the market doesn't really, can't quite advance, or maybe it doesn't quite hold VWAP over here, I am going to get out of the trade, or I'm going to be more cautious on my longs. If the market can continue to climb higher, then I'm going to ride those longs up a little bit more. But a bit of a tricky day, no doubt, a bit of a tricky day. And you just have to be patient, waiting for that dip, because you know it's going to come, and that's going to be a nice entry point for your positions. I'm liking the price action here. This is some low volume coming up on the stock. But yeah, those are my 2 picks today. In terms of some other positions, some other basic strategies, I'm not looking to take any swing trades right now. I want to wait for a little bit more of a dip, or I want to see some of the selling pressure stall out. Then I feel more comfortable taking some dips. So look for some stocks that are relatively strong. The second thing is that I'm looking for mainly day trades and earnings time spreads. Those are going to be picks that there are going to be a lot of earnings time spreads coming up this whole month. So there's going to be some nice picks coming up. One example here, GS is decent, but I want a lower number of, if I have a times exceeded, I want this to be lower, and the difference isn't just quite as high. So if I have a times exceeded of 13.3, I want a very, very high difference to justify that risk, something like 1. If I have a lower times exceeded, then I can get away with a bit of a lower difference. So that's it for today. Again, still keeping it light on the day trades, still focusing on those, and we'll take a look at how these picks did on Monday. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys then.